Flight AZ-417 had been in the air for nearly 3 hours, cruising peacefully above a blanket of silver clouds. The cabin hummed with the soft rhythm of normal life at 36,000 feet. Children were glued to their animated movies. Parents dozed with half-open blankets. Teenagers scrolled endlessly on their phones, and older passengers exchanged polite travel stories. It felt like one of those flights where time itself relaxed and stretched like a lazy cat. Amina, seated in 14A, watched the sky through the window with the quiet fascination only a child who loves flying can feel. She loved planes, no, she adored them. Every wing flap, every hum of the engine, every vibration made sense to her. She would occasionally glance at the wing, watching the sunlight dance across the metal surface. To her, it was beautiful like poetry written in steel. She didn't know that within minutes. That beauty would turn into chaos. At 2:17 p.m. Something strange happened, something subtle, almost unnoticeable at first. The engine on the right side emitted a faint metallic rattle, like a coin bouncing in a tin can. Only a few passengers lifted their heads, unsure if they'd heard anything at all. Amina's eyes narrowed. She knew the normal sounds of aircraft engines like the back of her hand. And that sound didn't belong. Then it came the sound that no one ever forgets. Boom! A thunderous explosion rocked the aircraft so violently that drinks spilled. Phones dropped and a few terrified passengers screamed. The plane lurched sharply to the right, causing overhead luggage compartments to rattle. A baby began wailing somewhere near the back of the cabin. A domino effect of panic rippled through the passengers. A moment later. An even worse sound filled the cabin. Silence. Not the calm silence of peace, but the chilling silence left behind when something essential disappears. The right engine flickered once, sputtered, and died completely. The constant humming that passengers took for granted vanished on one side of the aircraft. The plane tilted, dipping dangerously. Oxygen masks dropped with a mechanical hiss, swaying like ghostly vines from the ceiling. People gasped as cold fear clamped tight around their chests. Several passengers grabbed the masks instinctively, fumbling with trembling hands. Amina felt her stomach drop not with fear, but with recognition. She had simulated emergencies like this dozens of times in flight simulators. But this was real. The pressure in her ears increased as the airplane began losing altitude. She forced herself to breathe steadily. Panic never helps, not in the cockpit, not in the cabin. Somewhere near the front. A flight attendant stumbled as she rushed to reassure the passengers. It's okay. Please remain calm. Please. But her voice shook, betraying her fear. Inside the cockpit, Captain Harris and First Officer Moore battled an orchestra of alarms screaming for attention. Red lights flashed. Warning messages blinked across the panel. Engine 2 failure. Altitude. Loss detected. Right hydraulics imbalanced. The captain's hands flew across the controls as he tried to stabilize the plane with only one functioning engine. Sweat dripped down his forehead, but he remained focused. He trained for emergencies, but losing an engine without warning at cruising altitude was every pilot's nightmare. He grabbed the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We are experiencing a technical issue. Inside the cabin, people clutched their armrests, some praying under their breath, others crying. One man vomited into a paper bag. A teenage boy shook uncontrollably, his mother hugging him tight. Amina closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply. Her heart pounded like a drum inside her chest, but she forced her thoughts to stay clear. She began observing everything, how the plane banked, how the left engine still roared, how the vibrations changed. She felt the aircraft fighting to stay stable. The pilots were trying their best. Asterisk. But things were getting worse. Asterisk. The plane sagged another 100 feet. Then another. The mountains far below grew clearer, their snow-covered peaks rising like giants beneath the falling aircraft. Asterisk. Captain Harris made a decision he never thought he'd have to make in his 22 years of flying. He switched on the cabin microphone again. Asterisk. This is the captain speaking. I need to ask something unusual. If there is any trained pilot on board or anyone with flight experience, please make yourself known to the crew immediately. Asterisk. The words cut through the cabin like a blade. Passengers stared at one another, desperate, hoping anyone would stand. A trained pilot on board could mean life or death, but no one stood. Not a single person raised their hand. Asterisk. Fear spread like wildfire. A sob escaped from a woman. A man muttered, "We're doomed." Asterisk. But in seat 14A, Amina felt something awaken inside her. Not arrogance, not overconfidence, just certainty. She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. Her mother turned to her, alarmed. Asterisk. Amina, sit down. What are you doing? Amina swallowed hard. Mom? I can help. Her legs trembled as she stood, but her eyes were steady. She wasn't just standing for herself. Asterisk. She was standing for everyone on that plane. For a moment, no one noticed the small figure rising from seat 14I. Everyone was too consumed by fear, the kind of fear that swallows sound, slows time, and makes the air feel heavier than metal. The captain's announcement still echoed painfully in the cabin. Asterisk. Any trained pilot? Anyone with flight experience? Asterisk. Passengers glanced around desperately, expecting a heroic figure to stand a tall man in a leather jacket. A confident woman with pilot wings pinned to her blouse. Maybe even a retired Air Force captain quietly reading a newspaper. But row after row, seat after seat, remained still. No one moved. No one spoke, except for Amina. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the surrounding panic as she said, "I can help." But her mother heard her clearly. "What are you saying?" Her mother whispered harshly, eyes wide with fear. "Amina, sit down. Now is not the time for games." Asterisk. I'm not joking, Mom, Amina replied, her voice trembling but determined. I know this aircraft model. I've flown it 1,000 times in the simulator. I can help the captain. Asterisk. Her mother stared at her, torn between disbelief and terror. Baby, this is real life. This isn't a game. The plane, asterisk, it's the same systems, Amina insisted. The same controls. The same warnings. I know what to do. Asterisk. Her mother grabbed her wrist. Amina, if something happens to you, asterisk. If I don't try, Amina whispered, something will happen to all of us. Those words silenced her mother more than anything. But 13-year-old, children weren't supposed to volunteer during emergencies. They were supposed to cry, to cling to adults, to be protected. Yet here Amina was standing with shaky legs but steady purpose. Asterisk. Just then, a flight attendant hurried down the aisle, checking for volunteers. Asterisk. Anyone? She called out, panic leaking into her voice. Asterisk. Amina raised her hand higher. Here. Asterisk. The flight attendant stopped mid-step when she saw a child. For a second, confusion froze her. She blinked, convinced she had misunderstood. Asterisk. You raised your hand? She asked hesitantly. Asterisk. Yes, Amina said. I can help the pilots. Asterisk. The attendant's eyebrows shot up. Honey, this is very serious. Are your parents? Asterisk. Her mother swallowed hard. She's telling the truth. Asterisk. The attendant still hesitated, torn between protocol and desperation. Another loud shudder rippled through the aircraft, and passengers screamed as the plane dipped again. The captain's voice echoed faintly through the speakers, trying to stay calm but strained. Asterisk. Crew, any assistance would be appreciated. The attendant made a decision. Come with me, she said, her voice shaking. Asterisk. Amina nodded once, took a deep breath, and followed the attendant. Every eye in the cabin followed her. Some looked confused. Others looked horrified. A few stared at her with desperate, fragile hope, because in that moment, she was the only person standing. Asterisk. As she walked, the aircraft rumbled again, and the lights flickered. Amina grabbed seatbacks to steady herself. She could feel the fear around her like a physical force, people clutching hands, crossing themselves, whispering prayers. One old woman reached out and touched Amina's arm gently. Asterisk. God bless you, child, she whispered. Asterisk. Amina offered her a nervous, tiny smile. Asterisk. The narrow hallway leading to the cockpit felt like a tunnel stretching endlessly forward. The closer she got, the louder the alarms became, urgent, metallic, overwhelming. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst, but she kept walking. The flight attendant knocked on the cockpit door. Captain, someone's here. Asterisk. Captain Harris unlocked the door, expecting a tall, capable adult. Instead, he saw a child, a tiny child, a girl, barely a teenager. Asterisk. For the first time since the engine explosion, he looked truly shocked. Asterisk. You're the volunteer? He asked, almost unable to process it. Asterisk. Amina swallowed nervously. Yes, sir. Asterisk. The first officer turned in disbelief. Captain, we can't, she's just, asterisk, but Captain Harris held up a hand, studying Amina closely. Her eyes weren't wild with panic. Her breathing wasn't frantic. She had a steady focus that many adults lacked in emergencies. Asterisk. What experience do you have? He asked carefully. Asterisk. Flight simulators, she said. Hundreds of hours. This plane, Boeing 737, I know the panels, the systems, the emergency procedures. I know what the alarms mean. I know how to stabilize altitude loss. If you tell me what you need, I can follow. Asterisk. The cockpit shook again. Warning lights blinked faster. The captain's jaw tightened. They were losing time. Asterisk. First Officer Moore shook his head. Captain, this is insane. Asterisk. I don't have many choices left. Captain Harris said firmly. He knelt slightly so he was eye level with Amina. Listen to me, he said. What we're facing is dangerous. Very dangerous. But if you truly believe you can help, if you stay calm, follow instructions, and don't freeze, I'm willing to let you sit in the co-pilot seat. Asterisk. Amina nodded quickly. I won't freeze. He studied her face one more time. Then he stepped aside. Asterisk. All right, he said. Then sit. And listen carefully. Asterisk. Amina slid into the co-pilot seat. Asterisk. Her hands hovered over the controls. Asterisk. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. This wasn't a simulator. This was real. Asterisk. And 184 lives were now in her hands. The cockpit felt like a different world, small, cramped, and glowing with frantic red and amber lights. The alarms blared like warning sirens in a storm, vibrating through Amina's bones. She had seen cockpits before in pictures, videos, and simulations, but being inside one during a real emergency was nothing like she imagined. It was louder, brighter, hotter, every sound sharper, every second heavier. Asterisk. Captain Harris strapped himself back into the left seat while First Officer Moore frantically adjusted switches, scanning the failing systems. Asterisk. Airspeed dropping. Moore shouted. Asterisk. Balance it with the left engine. Harris responded. We can't afford another stall. Amina's hands trembled over the control yoke. She had flown this exact model hundreds of times, but all of that was in the safe glow of a computer screen. Here, the stakes were higher than her mind could fully grasp. One mistake, one wrong angle, and everything ends. But the moment she placed her hands firmly on the controls, something changed inside her. Her breathing slowed. Her focus sharpened. Her fear didn't disappear, but it became quiet. Almost instantly, she recognized the feel of the aircraft, the tilt, the drag, the weight on the left wing carrying all the thrust. This was the real thing, but the principles were the same. She swallowed. Captain? I feel a right side dip, she said softly. Correct it, he instructed. She nodded, tightened her grip, and applied light, careful pressure on the yoke. The nose lifted slightly, and the aircraft leveled out. The dip eased. The alarms quieted by one notch. The captain stared at her. You felt that before I even saw it, he said. In the simulator. Single-engine balance drills were my favorite, she whispered. Cheeks flushing, a tremor of turbulence shook the aircraft again, and the altitude gauge continued its slow downward crawl. Outside the windscreen, the mountains were no longer distant shadows, they were rising, getting clearer. Their snow-covered ridges like the teeth of a giant lying in wait. The first officer checked the weather radar. We're losing altitude faster than the engines can hold. We need a runway now. Amina scanned the terrain map glowing faintly on the left panel. She had memorized this region from her flight sim route. There's a small airstrip ahead, she said, pointing. Flat Ridge Airfield. It's about 12 minutes from here if we bank left. Moore frowned. That's a private strip. Too small. Too risky. It's either that or the mountains, Amina replied calmly. Captain Harris pressed his lips together. She wasn't wrong. He checked the coordinates. She was accurate, remarkably accurate. Bank left, he said. Moore hesitated. Captain, I said bank left. The plane responded slowly, groaning with the effort. Amina helped guide the turn, keeping the nose steady, making tiny adjustments with precision that startled both pilots. How are your hands so steady? Moore asked in disbelief. Amina didn't look up from the controls. They're not steady, she admitted. I'm terrified. But her fear didn't show in her movements. Every correction she made was smooth and controlled. An alarm blared again, this time a deep, pulsing tone. Altitude critical. Moore shouted. We're too low. Amina felt the aircraft drag downward, heavy like a falling stone. Instinct kicked in. Captain, pull back 2 degrees. No more. If we pitch higher, we'll stall. Both pilots stared at her. How do you know that? Harris demanded. I've crashed in sims doing it wrong, she said simply. The captain reacted instantly, adjusting the pitch exactly as she instructed. The plane groaned, but the descent slowed. Not by much, but enough to matter. The cockpit fell silent except for the alarms. The seriousness of their situation pressed in like a crushing weight. Captain Harris looked at Amina. Listen to me. We're going to need your help all the way. Can you do this? Amina inhaled sharply. She thought of her mother in the cabin, gripping her seat in terror. She thought of the crying children, the praying elderly woman, the strangers whose lives were suddenly tied to hers. She nodded. Yes, sir. The captain gave her the smallest smile, tight, strained, but real. Good. And keep your eyes on the horizon. We're counting on you. Wind buffeted the aircraft as they entered a rough air pocket. The plane shook violently, and for a moment Amina felt her stomach flip as the nose dipped again. She corrected it instantly. "I've got it," she said. "Good girl," Harris replied. Flat Ridge Airfield appeared on the radar, now a short strip of asphalt, carved into a valley like a thin scar. Amina's chest tightened. It looked even smaller than she remembered from the simulator. Moore shook his head. "That runway is barely long enough for a small charter plane. Landing is 737 there is, possible," Amina interrupted quietly. "Hard, but possible." The captain took a deep breath. "Then we prepare for the most dangerous landing of our lives." He turned to her. "Amina, you and I will bring this aircraft down together." Her heart hammered. This was it. No turning back. The mountains waited below. The runway waited ahead, and gravity was not on their side. Flat Ridge Airfield came into sight not as a welcoming runway, but as a thin gray scratch in the vast stretch of wilderness below. It was small, far too small for a commercial aircraft of this size. To Amina, it looked like a tightrope stretched across a canyon. One wrong move, one gust of wind, one miscalculated angle, and the plane wouldn't land, it would collide. The cockpit felt unbearably tense. The alarms had quieted to a steady, urgent beeping, but the danger was greater than ever. The aircraft was limping on a single engine, fighting gravity with every mile. Captain Harris looked at the runway ahead, then at the girl in the co-pilot seat. "This is going to be rough," he warned. "I know," Amina whispered, though inside her heart was pounding like a drum. First Officer Moore tightened his seatbelt until the strap dug into his chest. Will need near-perfect alignment. That strip is unforgiving. Amina swallowed. "Then let's get it right." The aircraft descended through a pocket of turbulent air, jolting violently. Loose papers flew around the cockpit. Something metallic clattered in the cabin behind them. The plane shook so hard that Amina had to tighten her grip on the controls to keep her hands in place. "Hold her steady." Captain Harris shouted. "I've got it." Amina replied, voice trembling but controlled. The plane leveled again, though the turbulence continued to hammer them. The entire airframe groaned in protest. Below, the mountains opened into a narrow valley. The strip lay at the far end, a final chance, a final hope. Moore checked the gauges again. "Flaps are responding." "Barely." "There'll have to be enough," Harris said. Amina looked at the rapidly approaching landscape. "Captain, if we approach too high, we'll overshoot the runway." And if we approach too low, Moore added grimly, "we won't reach it." Amina took a deep breath. It reminded her of a quote she once read from a pilot. In the end, flying is half science and half trust. Her hand steadied. "Captain, bring us down at a shallow angle," she said. "Let gravity help, but don't let it take over." The captain nodded, following her guidance. It felt strange, unbelievable, even to take direction from a 13-year-old. But she hadn't been wrong once. The aircraft dipped into final approach. The cabin behind them erupted into panic as the ground rushed up to meet them. Screams filled the air. Some passengers cried. Others held hands with strangers. A mother whispered soothing words to her baby. An elderly man prayed softly, clutching a rosary so tightly his knuckles turned white. Amina heard none of it, just the roaring wind and her own heartbeat. Lower the gear. Harris commanded. Moore pulled the lever. The landing gear unfolded with a heavy thud, followed by a shudder that ran through the entire plane. Gear down and locked. Moore confirmed. Amina exhaled slowly. Okay. Bring her left 3 degrees. Too far correct. Good. The tip of the runway was seconds away now. Moore's voice cracked. We're coming in too fast. Asterisk, we can't reduce thrust more, Harris said. One engine can only do so much. Asterisk use the drag, Amina said quickly. Slight right rudder, just a tap. Asterisk Harris reacted instantly. The nose shifted slightly. The descent angle sharpened. The strip met them like a charging beast. Brace. Harris yelled. Amina gripped the controls with all her strength. The plane slammed into the runway. Asterisk, a bone-shaking impact rattled every bolt in the aircraft. The wheels screeched. The cabin screamed. A suitcase burst from an overhead bin and crashed to the floor. Asterisk. The plane bounced once, twice each time threatening to careen off the tiny airstrip. Asterisk. Keep her straight. Harris shouted. Asterisk Amina fought the yoke, muscles burning. The aircraft lurched dangerously to the right. Asterisk left. Left more. Moore yelled. Amina corrected, jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. The plane roared forward. Too fast, runway running out. Asterisk. We're not slowing down enough. Moore cried. Asterisk. Reverse thrust full. Harris commanded. Asterisk. Moore slammed the controls. The engine howled. Sparks flew as the brakes fought the plane's momentum. The end of the runway rushed toward them. Beyond it was nothing, just a steep drop into the valley. Asterisk. Amina whispered, Please. Stop. The huge aircraft screamed against the asphalt. And then, silence. A deep, breathtaking silence. The plane groaned to a halt 2 meters, just 2 from the edge. For a long moment. No one moved. Then the cabin erupted. Sobs. Laughter through tears. People hugging strangers. Applause so loud it shook the walls. Flight attendants crying openly from pure relief. Asterisk. Amina felt her body trembling uncontrollably as she finally released the controls. Her hands were red and stiff. Asterisk. Captain. Harris looked at her with eyes full of disbelief and gratitude beyond words. Asterisk. You saved them, he whispered. You saved all of us. Asterisk. Moore exhaled shakily. Amina, you just performed a landing that some professionals couldn't. Asterisk. The cockpit door burst open and her mother rushed in, tears pouring down her face. She wrapped Amina in a fierce hug, sinking to her knees with pure, overwhelming relief. Asterisk. My brave girl, she sobbed. My hero. Amina closed her eyes. In that tiny cockpit on a tiny runway in a giant world. She realized something. Heroes aren't chosen. Asterisk. Sometimes they simply stand up when no one else does.